To the river, down the river, follow it home.
Our guest today is Emily Rose Winter, and she's been tracking fish movement in the Broads National Park for her PhD. It's the first ever large-scale tracking study done in the Broads National Park, and she's kindly agreed to come along and talk to us all about it. So, morning, Emily. What got you interested in fish in the first place?
Good morning. Well, I guess it all started when I was a teenager, and I started scuba diving, and the underwater world just came alive for me, really. I realised that the diversity of fish species is so huge. You know, they have so many different shapes and sizes and behaviours, and I really wanted to learn more about that.
Excellent. So what's your PhD about?
Our main aim in the Broads is to monitor fish movements and understand a bit more about how they use the Broads environment, because basically there's a lot we don't know at the moment.
Why do you think scientists want to find out about this information?
Well, there are lots of people working really hard to protect the Broads, the habitats and the animals and plants that live there. So understanding more about how animals use their environment is a key part of that process. And fish up to now have been very mysterious in terms of where they go, at what times of the year, and how many of them go to certain places. So it's really key that we understand more about these movements before we can successfully protect them.
And whereabouts in the Broads National Park have you been monitoring the fish?
We are working in the northern area of the Broads, which encompasses the River Bure, the River Ant and the River Thurn, and lots of the connected Broads and dike systems in that area as well.
And why did you choose to use bream and pike for your study?
Well, two reasons really. Firstly, they're fairly abundant in the Broads, so fairly easy for our anglers to catch. So we could have a nice sample size, which is always good. Secondly, we thought, well, they're very different in terms of their behaviours and the way in which they interact with each other and the environment. So we were hoping that they would tell us quite different information about how different types of fish use the Broads.
And can you tell us a bit more information about the two types of fish, like the two species, and a couple of cool facts about them?
Yeah, of course. I've actually made some models of my study species, so I will show you now. Here is something resembling a bream. As you can see, they're quite thin but have a deep body. They eat lots of different things, so plants, invertebrates like worms and plankton, and they have a cool mouth which opens really wide and protrudes forwards, and they can suck up their food from the sediment as they wander around. And they're very sociable animals. They travel around in fairly big shoals, and they can move quite far, whereas the pike, here you can see, is much more elongated, a shape that's very good at darting through the water towards their prey. They are a predator. They can grow much bigger than this, and they'll eat other fish, birds, frogs, anything that moves really, even each other. So they're not very sociable. They generally hang out on their own and don't move very far. They wait for their food to come to them.
So to track the fish, you used acoustic telemetry. How exactly does that work?
Acoustic telemetry uses ultrasonic sound, which is sound very high-pitched, higher than humans can hear. But that sound sends signals underwater between the tags that we put inside the fish and our receivers, which are our underwater listening stations. And basically when a fish is in the region in the area of a receiver, that receiver will hear the ping or the coded signal from the tag, and it will record that a fish is in the area, and then we can have a look at that data afterwards.
And how far away does the fish have to be for the receiver to be able to pick up the tag?
That depends to some degree on environmental conditions, so things like the weather, but generally between 200 metres and 800 metres.
And to implant all of these tags, you obviously had to catch the fish first. How did you do that?
We had an absolutely dedicated team of anglers. They worked night and day, so a huge thank you goes out to them for all the fish that they managed to catch.
And what were the biggest ones they caught and you tagged?
I think the biggest they caught was a pike, measured over 1 metre long and weighed probably about 30 pounds, which is the weight of a toddler, small child.
In the end, how many fish did you put trackers into?
We tagged just over 180 bream and 45 pike. And
did any of those tags go missing, or the fish or the tags go missing? Like what happens if an otter eats a fish, for example?
Yeah, some do go missing over the course of the study. You know, some fish do naturally die or get eaten, and some fish will move outside of the area and away from our monitoring stations. But if predators like otters eat the fish, then generally those tags will move, pass straight through the digestive system, or they might be regurgitated, but they shouldn't cause any harm to those predators.
And how big are the tags?
I have one here. This is an acoustic tag, about the size of the end of my little finger. And we have to make sure that the fish are large enough for these tags to go into, so we can't tag small fish.
And how long did you collect the data for?
We're looking at about 2.5 years now.
That must have generated quite a lot of information.
Yes, I think we have millions of detections on record. So we have lots of clever computer programs to process all that information.
I know you're still writing up and you're due to finish in October, but do you have any results you can share with us about what you found out?
We knew that the bream are quite mobile, but what we didn't expect was to see repeated migrations in the bream. And we think these are spawning migrations. So they're moving between, or some of them are moving between the River Thurn around Hickling Broad, Potter Heigham area, through to the River Bure around Wroxham area at specific times of the year in spring, which is their spawning season. And that journey is about 35 to 40 kilometres there and back. So it's interesting to us that the bream are so particular about choosing their specific spawning habitat where those eggs will grow up and be safe. Lots of people scratching their heads about what's so special about certain areas at the moment for spawning bream. With the pike, we weren't expecting them to move around so far at all, but some individuals did really surprise us, and we had one pike in particular, which I think she was in the River Ant around Barton Broad, and then she travelled up to Horning on the River Bure, and then into the River Thurn, and then all the way down past Stokesby on the River Bure towards the estuary. So she made an impressive journey of 100 kilometres maybe, and we're still wondering what her motivations might have been for that.
That's fascinating stuff. Why are these discoveries so important or useful?
Well, as I said at the beginning, there are lots of people working really hard to protect the fish in the Broads. They're under a little bit of stress as climate change progresses with sea level rise. We're getting more and more saltwater influx into the freshwater system. So understanding how these fish use their environment is really important for us to learn how to protect them in the future.
And talking of the future, if you had all the money you needed and the time, what would you like to study? What aspect would you like to study of the fish?
Well, in terms of the Broads, I think sociality in the bream is really interesting, and I'd love to learn more about how their social groups are formed, whether they always stick with the same individuals, whether certain individuals are dominant and lead the shoals, and others, perhaps the younger ones, learn the ropes from the older ones. These are all questions that are unanswered, and we can only speculate at the moment. So it would be great to learn more about that.
What sort of equipment would you need? Would it be the same type of telemetry, or would you use underwater cameras? Or
Underwater cameras would be useful, although they're very time consuming to look at all the data generated from them. We could adapt our acoustic telemetry system to look at more fine scale movements, to understand if fish are sticking together. But yeah, as I say, it would need some adapting. It's not fit for purpose as it is at the moment.
Brilliant. Well, thank you ever so much, Emily, for talking to us, and we wish you all the best of luck with your PhD, and hopefully we might even see you at the Norwich Science Festival this year, depending on coronavirus.
I hope so, yeah.